Right, lean in close there. So today we're talking about the Replicants, or Replicants, it's stylized as. And this is a mid 90s band slash project, and from Ken Andrews and Greg Edwards of Failure fame, who I've always championed as one of my favorite bands, and the reason why I, started playing guitar in high school. Never got very good at it, but was always interested about their production style and their tuning, which was quite drop D, and they were just a really interesting band to me because they always seemed very DIY. I loved Ken Andrews' lyrics, Greg Edwards' bass playing. The way the way they sounded sonically, and especially when they started taking over production duties for themselves, and that's why I say DIY. But this is an album that they did with Paul Dumar. Is that how you pronounce his name? From Tool fame. He played bass for Tool from 1990 to 1995. And Chris Pittman, who does keyboards, backing vocals, acoustic guitar, and sings lead on the David Bowie cover here. Greg Edwards, the aforementioned Greg Edwards of, again, Failure, and Autolux, another one of my favorite bands, fame. He plays drums, percussion, guitar, and keyboards. Paul is on guitar and sings lead vocals on Ibiza Bar, which is a Pink Floyd song, and Ken Andrews is lead vocals, bass, guitar, backing vocals, and programming. So they're a bunch of talented dudes. So this album, which is still easy enough to get on CD, and I really needed a copy in the streaming day and age because you can't seem to get this anywhere. Anyway, it opens up. It's all covers, I should say from the get-go. It's an all-covers album, which was never something I really gravitated towards when I was a teenager. I wanted to hear originals, but, it was too good to pass up, rather, because I loved Failure, but at the time, they only had 3 albums out, and even that Golden compilation and documentary weren't out yet. So we just had 3 Failure albums. We had some Ken Andrews solo stuff. I don't think Autolux had even really begun yet. No, they hadn't. So really, it was slim pickings. You got what you got. And when I discovered there was a covers album with Greg and Ken, with their additional friends here, that really interested me. And anyway, it one thing I have to really say about this album is I think it was one of those albums that was really instrumental into me getting into other stuff and older stuff. And specifically this first song, Just What I Needed, which was originally by The Cars. It came out on their debut album, which is probably my favorite one, though they had a really consistent discography, much like Failure. But yeah, probably that one or Heartbeat City. Just What I Needed. I actually preferred this more kind of grungy, a little noisier version when I was a kid. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I love their version. I love this take on that song. And what a great opener and a great way to get you into this project. Silly Love Songs, interestingly, follows this up because it's 7.5 minutes. You'd think this one would be kind of later on, I guess, but Maynard from Tool sings lead vocals on this song, and it's almost like a parody of the Paul McCartney song because his is so just silly and fluffy. It's not really a bad song, but it kind of has that disco, very light pop nature about it, and they turned it into this cynical sounding dirge, and man, what a great cover. And there would be lots of connections here. I think Tool and Maynard always kind of championed Failure and wanted the band to be bigger, and they should have been. They really should have been. They got robbed. But he also would cover Failure, one of their best songs ever, The Nurse Who Loved Me, from one of my favorite albums ever, Fantastic Planet. They would cover that on the much more popular 13 Step, which, sold a lot of copies, but I don't think a lot of Tool and A Perfect Circle fans really went back and said, who's he covering on this dreamy tune? Oh, wow, the original's amazing. Let's go check out that band and that album. It's blowing our minds, because it's a lot noisier, and as much as I love the A Perfect Circle version, it doesn't get any more interesting than that original version. It's so good. Anyway, like I said, they turn it into cynical sounding dirge, and that's what you want from a good cover, is them to put their own stamp on it, but it also be good as well and have value as well. And I gotta say, I mean, I love Sir Paul, but some of his solo stuff, but Silly Love Songs is a decent enough song, but this version kind of kills that version, I gotta say. Next up is Life's a Gas, and I'm pretty sure when I was a teenager, other than Bang a Gong, I had no idea what T-Rex really was. And, what a great song. I mean, it's kind of more, has this more kind of down-tuned, I don't know how you'd say it, kind of lazy, hazy nature to it. It's a really effective way of doing it. And then you have Cinnamon Girl, which kind of amps up the energy again, and so the sequencing is pretty good. It's pretty interesting. I just think it's weird they put Silly Love Song second. I think that might have alienated some people, but maybe not. Maybe 90s listeners were a little more patient than people are today. But Cinnamon Girl, great version, and I don't think I was as in love with Neil Young anymore, his music, not him as a person, especially after reading the book about him, but in love with his music as, and maybe this helped, I'm not sure. But I gotta say, with my first paycheck, I think from my first official job, I guess, I went to a record store that no longer exists anymore, and I bought The Cars debut, a Neil Young album, and a Police record. And I think maybe those first two choices might have a little bit to do with Replicants, because I wasn't into the older music first, as I kind of alluded to. I always liked these guys, but it took me a while to even get into the Beatles and the Stones, because I just thought, oh, that's my parents' music, and I really only knew the Beatles for, like, I Want to Hold Your Hand and stuff like that, and Help, and I thought, oh, it's just silly music, which is really wrong, but I didn't know, like, Norwegian Wood and Michelle and, the psychedelic stuff, and I didn't know that, wow, these are the most influential guys of all time, like, in music, other than all the bluesmen, of course, but, for pop era, they are, even if you hate them, you can't deny that, and I know some people that do. It's always funny, people that hate the Beatles. Anyway, How Do You Sleep is next, speaking of the Beatles, and that, of course, is the cutting John Lennon song that just completely rips Paul a new one, and it's almost mean-spirited, but it's such a good song, and I think that this one doesn't reach the height of John's original, of course, but, Ken does a pretty good job, but I don't know if Ken is as convincing. It doesn't sound as biting, and there's probably a reason for that. It's not quite as personal, but I do appreciate their take on it. Destination Unknown is next, and it was the single. It was the sole single, I believe. I'm pretty sure I have a copy somewhere in the collection that I bought for too much off Discogs, because it looked like it was cheap. It was my first experiment with Discogs, and I was like, wow, that's really cheap. Add to cart. Once you add to cart there, I think you're through. The person thinks you're getting it. And then I noticed how much it was going to be to ship, and it was like, 20 times more than the asking price, and I paid way too much for a single and was kind of upset at myself. Because it's like, how many times will I put that on when I have the album over here? And it's just a bunch of remixes. Anyway, Destination Unknown is by Missing Persons. It's an 80s song, and it's pretty good on its own accord, but I love this version. This is the version I always go for. But it's fun to play them back to back. I really like them both, but it's one of the highlights from this record. It and Just What You Needed are the highlights so far. Just what I needed, which is just what you needed anyway. And then number 7 is, interestingly, speaking of these guys, it's a cover of Syd Barrett, No Good Trying, from that one was from Sid's first album, Madcap Laughs, and I believe so. Now I want to go check. But yeah, it's very fast. It's completely different than Sid's sad, slow version. It's just rockin'. It's only a minute long, just over a minute. And I guess it's the low light, though it's still a lot of fun. Let's just say that. It's very inessential. If it was taken out of the track list, you wouldn't notice because you'd still have 10 songs and it would still equal album length. But, you know, it's a nice enough tune for sure. Not really slagging it off. Then you have number 8, Our Friends Electric, and that, of course, is by the Two Boy Army, the Gary Newman band. And it's their most well-known song, you know, before he hit it really big with Cars in his solo career. But and they reissued this and put it under his name a lot. But this is probably another highlight, and I love the original too. It's hard to top that, and I don't think they do. But like a lot of these songs, though there are some where they do, and this has a lot of value. Number 9 on the track list is Dirty Work, and I definitely didn't know Steely Dan when I was growing up, and what a great version. You can never cover the Dan and top them, but at least it's not Donny Osmond singing one of their songs, because that's just, you know, that guy can make the best song ever a piece of crap, and Replicants do a really good job with Dirty Work, which is one of my favorites off that debut from Steely Dan. It might be my second or third favorite from, you know, one of the best debuts ever, probably. But yeah, really great work on Dirty Work. They didn't do the band dirty, and they didn't do the Dan dirty. The Beulah Brothers is next, and it is also 7 minutes long, over 7 minutes, much like Silly Love Songs. And this one is sung by Chris Pittman. Yes, I got his name right. Okay, so he sings that one. And that's a good version too. I mean, you're not going to beat the Bowie, but that's a good version. And then very last is It Beats the Bar, which is another Pink Floyd song. And makes me think that I probably should have put up my More soundtrack Pink Floyd instead of Adam Hart Mother over there. I didn't have that foresight, but that's okay. And this one is sung by Paul himself, Paul Dumar. I'm going to get so much criticism from Tool fans for probably not saying his name right. But yeah, that's a really good one too. And I definitely didn't have more yet. I think I had a lot of Pink Floyd albums when I finally heard this, but I didn't have more. I only knew the Nile song and maybe Cymbeline for some reason. And It Beats a Bar was always the companion piece to the Nile song. It's Pink Floyd getting as close as they ever did to heavy metal. And yeah, this 5-minute version Replicants do is definitely a nice addition. So yeah, this is a very interesting album, and it's recommended definitely for fans of Failure, fans of Tool even, fans of Year of the Rabbit and Autolux. If you like Ken or Greg or Paul, definitely check this out. And or Lusk, which is another band that I would love to talk about on this channel. I love talking about these bands that only did one record, because it's just a little blip in time, and then they were gone. But thankfully these guys were all from projects before, and they all did lots of stuff after. Lots of stuff. Like, you know, Failure's probably recorded more songs since reforming than they did back in the day. Yeah, very much recommended if you like those bands. So it's kind of a time capsule, a product of its time, but it's just good covers of great songs. And some of these are as great, and I hesitate to say a couple of them I like better. I think I alluded to that. So Replicants, if you know this one, you know, I haven't met too many people out there that know this one. So yeah, let me know what you think, and we'll talk about Replicants and Failure, and maybe what I should do next for another Forgotten Friday episode. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Cheers, and good vibes to you. Thank you.